California Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco's case against Attorney General Rob Bonta. That's happening on Monday, August 24th. Now, the case stems from Bianco's seizure of thousands of ballots tied to the November 2025 special election on Proposition 50. Bonta challenged the investigation, and the state Supreme Court agreed to review the case earlier this year, pausing the sheriff's investigation. But what does that all really mean? Well, thankfully, legal expert Walter Clark joins us now to explain. All right, Walter, thanks for being kind enough to join us, and we'll get right into it. California Supreme Court hearing on August 24th. What's that all about? Can you break that down for us?
Going to be very interesting, I think, as you have reported. Sheriff Bianco did seize 650,000 ballots in March, investigating what he thought was voter fraud in the November 25 election, which was in regard to Prop 50, which had to do with redistricting, a very hotly contested political issue. As a result of his seizure of the ballots, the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, did sue successfully in the courts to secure the ballots and get possession of them in the sense that nobody else could mess with them, and paused the investigation by the sheriff. Next thing that happened chronologically, and this does describe a fairly complex legal history, is the press sued to get a look at the warrants so that the public could see what the basis was for the warrants, because the judge who had issued the warrants had sealed them. And as a result of that, the warrants were eventually turned over to the press and the public, and issues having to do with whether or not there was adequate probable cause and that the procedures were followed became an issue. So all of this is getting wrapped up and going to be heard, all of the issues, I think, on August 24 in San Francisco. It's a date that the parties have agreed to.
Now, what are the contentions of Sheriff Chad Bianco and Attorney General Rob Bonta, Walter?
Sure. First of all, the sheriff feels that the attorney general cannot stop him from investigating a crime. It sounds like that makes sense. He said the vote count was quite discrepant, some 45,000 votes difference between those that were received and those that were counted. And he said there was no explanation for that. He also said he doesn't really care what the experts say about the sufficiency of the warrants. And he claims that this whole thing is just politicizing by the attorney general because he was running for governor at the time all this was happening.
What are the possible outcomes in this, and in all your experience and years of doing this, what you think will happen?
I have some opinions, but first of all, Bonta, on the other hand, says that the Red Shore voters, Tanaco, did explain a small discrepancy, indicating that the votes that are received are not the same as the votes that are counted because some are without signature and they're improper. He also points out that the proper path for challenging an election is not just grabbing all the votes, but you are supposed to go through the procedures, and that no sheriff has ever before in the state of California seized all the ballots. Also, our attorney general says the warrants were not sufficient. They were not reviewed by a DA, and they were submitted to a judge who was a political ally of the sheriff. The most important point is that the Constitution clearly gives authority to the attorney general under Article 5 to supervise the sheriffs in the state of California. So the attorney general is the top law enforcement officer, and the reason he supervises the sheriffs is because we want to have the laws in the state administered equally. And so that's the status there. My opinion is that the sheriff is not going to be happy with the outcome. I really believe that the Supreme Court is going to secure the ballots so that nobody can mess with them, that they're going to set aside the warrants as being inadequate, and they will confirm the attorney general's authority over Bianco and not the other way around. So I think it's just unfortunate that these constant claims of rigged elections and inadequacies in the procedures of vote counting are without ground, and yet they continue to be issued by these groups. And the reason for that, I think, is they want to disparate, destroy, cause skepticism for the public in the political system. And I think that's really unfortunate.
Well, Walter Clark, always a pleasure. And that's why we bring you on, the top law official in our Coachella Valley. We appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time.